When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
That's right, everybody. We are back, and this is the HTML All the Things Podcast. This episode is titled How to Build a Website Quickly. Now, if we sound a little weird, there is a current and developing disaster or multiple disasters happening. We have someone in the residence vacuuming. Someone else is doing a renovation. We just came off of a massive tax disaster in which we couldn't pay things, and we were trying to pay things, and paperwork wasn't done. Disaster. So if we sound weird, tired, or whatever, that's where we're coming from. Mike, even funny enough, I was like, all right, Mike, like we're about to start recording because we had like a little business meeting, a little consultation and stuff and such. I was like, all right, Mike, do you need to grab a drink or anything before the show? And he just said he didn't care. He doesn't even care if he needs a drink.
Needs a drink, yeah. I don't care. I think I have water on my desk and just can't be bothered to look even. But I am ready for this episode. You know what? I'm going to focus up and I'm going to survive this episode and I'm going to probably pass out.
Lucky you, because I'm going to go do a bunch more tax stuff after this. But anyway, we're going to do this episode. This is not the Do Your Finances episode. This is a web development podcast, and I want to talk about developing a website quickly. But before I say that, remember that we do have a Scrimba affiliate link. If you want to learn how to code with their interactive media player code editor, go check out our affiliate link right in the show description or on htmlallthethings.com within the show notes. And if this sounds interesting to you and want to support the show, you can go check us on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. I honestly don't remember if I did that paragraph twice, so if you heard it twice this episode, then I've done 2 self-plugs, and I actually genuinely don't remember if I did it twice. So I apologize, or I don't apologize, and maybe I'm just on the ball.
You didn't do it twice. You're good.
It's a good thing that you're focused, Mike. As you said, you're focused, you're ready to go. Focused, ready to go. What's that thing from when we were like in high school for getting rid of acne? Clean, clear, and under control.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Clear Cell or whatever. Mm-hmm.
That's it. Anyway, how do we develop a site quickly? Well, this starts from a very high level as to how you even develop a site. So if we think about these sort of 3 key areas, you have no code, something like a Wix, a Squarespace, a Webflow, those things. You also have custom code, which is, of course, coding up everything from scratch or near scratch. And then you also have hiring a developer, meaning that you don't do it yourself. So this is kind of from the perspective, or it is from the perspective of, say, the entrepreneur or the business owner that says, I need to develop a website. How would I do it? And the thing on a lot of entrepreneurs' mind is, I need to do this fast, I need to do this cheap, and I need to do this perfect. And, that is a very hard combination to come by. It's often actually a lethal combination to come by. And that's why I wanted to do this episode, because building a website quickly is sometimes great, and it's sometimes something that I really don't advise, and we're going to get into that. But I'm going to cover these 3 areas I just talked about first: the no code, the custom code, and the hiring developer. How do we do it quickly in each of these categories? Well, we're going to start with no code here just to get it out of the way, as I know many of you are actually developers out there that do all custom stuff. So no code. I'm going to call them platforms, no code platforms, like, again, Squarespace, Wix, those type of things. They often have marketing pages and promises on those marketing pages and marketing materials that try to sell us on how quick and easy it is to make a website. Use our service, get up in 1 day, get things done in 10 minutes, whatever the sort of marketing spiel is, the slogan is. They try to play on this quick and easy angle. And that sounds perfect for an episode like this, which is talking about how to build a website quickly. Now, the thing is, though, is these tools, even though they're quick and easy and whatever that they sell, they still have a learning curve, and sometimes a very steep one. Each of these tools has its own unique pros and cons, of course, and so the learning curve is different for everybody. So the UX, the UI is different. So for example, and this is an example of a very steep learning curve, is actually Webflow. Webflow is very close to quote unquote writing CSS without actually writing the code. Up until the latest update in the designer, you literally clicked on like display, flex, blah, 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 blah. Now that interface is a little bit different. Flex is, there's still some CSS sort of verbiage in there. You can still click flex and whatever, but if you're a Webflow guy, you know that the interface for that display area has changed, and many people are complaining about it, including myself. But, short of that, you are going in and you are setting things like background size cover and, background attachment, and this is the color, and this is the font weight, and this is the font size. And these are things that are very much CSS. And so you're basically, quote unquote, writing CSS by clicking buttons. And that's a steep learning curve. If I told you to just go write CSS, you're starting to touch on custom code. You're writing HTML and CSS. It's very front end, it's very vanilla, and it doesn't have any JavaScript, but you're starting to lean into custom code. So Webflow does have a rather steep learning curve. Now, the thing I want to mention here, though, is that many of these tools are not like Webflow, where many of them are let's say, I guess module based, I suppose you could say, template based, those type of things, in which you basically click and drag in something like you would click in CTA, which is your call to action. And then you just fill in a little form that says, what do you want your buttons to say? How many buttons do you want on here? What's the heading? What's the thing? And then you type all this stuff in, you save it, and then it just appears on the screen. But you do have a more limited sort of set of tools at your disposal. So you do have to sort of pick and choose your no-code platform, because if you're trying to make a website quickly, you may not want that very steep learning curve, or maybe you do want that steep learning curve because maybe you're a person that learns fast, and then you can go crazy and just go be really powerful and build a lot of cool things with Webflow, for example. It's really up to you in that way. But another thing to consider here is not just the complexity of the tool, because that's what we're talking about here, right? How complex is this no-code tool at the end of the day? The complexity of your website, your project, will actually also affect this. This is something that a lot of people will overlook because they think, hey, I'm using a no-code platform. They handle everything. I mean, sure, but let's take a look at a very basic example, which is just a landing page. You could go into Webflow, download one of the templates, free or paid, change just the text and the images, not use any of those CSS controls that I've talked about. So there's very little learning curve, and boom, you have a full, responsive, professional landing page. But let's say you need to go further than that. And let's say you need to go to e-commerce, which a lot of these services promise is easy. Okay, great. Maybe the actual processing of the credit cards is not up to you. The actual changing of different security bits along the sort of e-commerce chain doesn't matter to you, right? You don't need to touch that stuff. But you do still need to know your payment information. Sometimes you'll need to know your tax details. You'll need to know your shipping costs, etc. And that's more businessy than development, but people forget this when they're promised, hey, I can develop an e-commerce site super quickly on this tool. I mean, that's great, but your business complexities still come in and will slow you down. It's very easy to forget that just because you're using an all-in-one tool, that your business complexities still exist. This has happened to our clients left, right, and center. I always tell them, hey, this is due Friday. Maybe start getting this thing spun up Monday. They don't do it. They wait to Thursday. They get to Thursday and they go, oh, well, in order to get this running, I need 8 pieces of documentation. I only have 6. I don't know how to get the other 2. What do I do? And then it becomes this sort of like panic of everyone running around, not really knowing what's going on. And yes, again, you're using a no-code platform. It was easy until we got to this one thing. There's still a learning curve, and there's still things that'll slow things down. Now, it sounds like I'm complaining, and that's not the case here. No-code platforms are absolutely quick and easy. They have a very not that steep of a learning curve in comparison to code, right? So in relation to learning how to custom code, the learning curve, even when it's steep within different no-code platforms, is not that steep. Learning to code is absolutely the steepest learning curve for sure, because you also have to learn what to learn. Then you have to learn that thing that you're doing. Then you have to learn how to deploy it and blah, 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 blah. So I'm not complaining about no code, but I am trying to warn you that in a lot of cases, it's not just going to be a hop in there, 2 days, boom, boom, boom. Okay, we're good to go. That's not necessarily the case. So let's answer the question. When is no code the fastest? Out of these 3 methods, no code, custom code, and hiring a developer, when is it the fastest? It's the fastest when you want to build the site yourself and you have no coding experience. You don't need to learn how to code. You don't need to learn how to deploy, and you don't need to learn how to maintain. You may have some maintenance on content and layout, but those are mostly preference. And there is typically a support team available to you. Usually, Squarespace, Wix, Webflow, you can reach out to their support team for help. And sometimes, on some of these services, you may have a live chat. So I've plugged in, this is a third-party tool I'm talking about now, but I've had a question about, I want to plug this thing into Webflow. It's this third-party plugin. I need some help. I go into the live chat, talk to the person. They tell me how to do it because I'm having some trouble. Boom, 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 and you're good. So you have a support team at your back, whether it's instantly or via email over a few days. So that is when no code is the fastest. There's no doubt.
Just to jump into the no code side of things, I think something I want to emphasize that you kind of touched on is the templates. Really take advantage of the templates. I think there's a really big difference with no code with a blank canvas and no code starting from a template. So like a lot of times people will equate the difficulties of no code especially when they're like, okay, I have these designs from Figma. Now I need to transfer them to a no code tool. That gets a little bit tough. Sometimes they do have a Figma to no code tool plugin, and then you just have to adjust things. That's great. But a lot of times it requires a lot of manual work, and you're in no code, so you don't really want to do a lot of manual work. And we're talking about speed here, especially. I'm emphasizing templates because I think it's a great place to start. When you have an idea and you just need to get something out there quickly, find a template that suits you. Don't worry that there's, 1,000 sites that look similar to this. I guarantee you that you'll still be able to get the point across. You'll still be able to get the idea of what you're trying to put out there, even with a template that people have seen before even, but more likely than not, people haven't, or they've forgotten or whatever, and sites look the same anyway. So I've talked to a lot of people that put a lot of weight on the fact that, hey, if I use a template, that means that I'm potentially using the same kind of layout as someone else. And true, if there's no doubt about that, it could be the case. But as long as you change up the colors, change up some of the images, change up the text, obviously, I almost 99.9% guarantee you that you'll never get a comment and be like, hey, I saw this same layout from one of your potential customers. So emphasizing templates on this one. Again, it's all about speed. Templates are the way to go.
That is a very good point, is that, I'm mentioning the learning curve with no code and how there's different types of editors, the widget-based ones, the sort of more closer to code ones, those type of things. But there are different ways to use these tools. Absolutely. You can fly through something with virtually no CSS knowledge at all, even on Webflow, again, with the templates. So if you're really trying to go fast, and maybe that should even be a note I should have added, when is no code the fastest? When you use all the tools at your disposal. You're using templates. I mean, how many people have used templates in WordPress, right? Templates are all over the place, themes. It's a huge thing. It gets you off the ground. And for many people that maybe you're more into the content writing side, you might just literally use a template, change some colors, maybe upload your logo, and you're not really messing with, I need this box here. We need a little extra spacing. Many people do care about that stuff, but many people do not. They more so want or need their content, their written bits, whether it's documentation or blog or whatever it is that you're writing. They need that information out there and out there now. And so that there are those tools, a no-code tool plus something like a template or something along those lines, will absolutely accelerate the process. Now, what about custom code? Now, the seasoned developers, that are listening to this, you're probably going to say, I can spin up a website so fast, and that's 100% true, right? You can avoid the learning curve of a no-code tool that we already mentioned. You can avoid that completely and just spin up a website at an incredibly fast speed, again, if you're seasoned. And this is because developers throughout their career will accrue a list of tools that they're familiar with. Things like Tailwind CSS, maybe React, Font Awesome, even a template, as we've already mentioned, even there's some sort of template that they always use. And this will allow them to finish full blocks of a site very quickly. Now, what do I mean by blocks? What I mean is things like, I need a call to action. That maybe there's some little plugin that they use for that. I need a nav bar set up real quick. Maybe there's some sort of plugin they use for that. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a plugin. It might be a custom snippet. So snippets are just little bits of code that someone has either found or written themselves, and they act similarly to sort of a plugin, if you will, but they're implemented kind of quickly, like copy-paste style, into people's codes. So if you're a seasoned developer, you've probably, let's say, for example, constantly written a social media section of a nav bar. you may just say, okay, the heck with this. I've done this over and over again. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So you save a code snippet of your own writing, and then you take that and you copy and paste it into all your projects, and you modify as needed with different colors or different links, those type of things. And if we don't want to just talk about the front end, so in the back end side of things, let's say, for example, you are constantly dealing with RSS feeds of different types. And so you are basically writing a back end, a server-side interpreter for an RSS feed in order to take it, throw it into the CMS, or whatever it is you're going to do with it. You might say, again, I've done this so many times, I do not want to reinvent the wheel. So I'm going to go and write a back-end interpreter, like a generic one, have that as one of my code snippets, and then whenever I need to interpret an RSS feed, it's my own little plugin. It's my own little snippet that I'm going to use to grab and organize the information that comes from an RSS feed. So, with all that being said, obviously, custom code has an absolutely massive learning curve, right? If you do not understand how to code, it's a big learning curve. Way, way higher than any no-code tool that I'm aware of. And the thing is there's also levels of developers, as we've talked about on this show time and time again. There's junior, senior, the list goes on. There's an absolute ton to learn in the coding sphere. And so if you're a person that goes, I want to build a website quickly, this is probably not the way to go. Chances are custom code is not the way to go unless you are a seasoned developer and you have a way to spin up quickly. But if you notice, the difference here between custom code and no code from a logistical perspective is no code is providing you kind of loosely, let's say, with the snippets and the plugins and all these things. It's providing you with the foundation, whereas the developer has sort of developed or created their own foundation. And yes, with the help of other tools that are made by other people like Tailwind CSS and React, for example, Font Awesome for icons, those type of things, of course, but it's their unique flavor. Like I might use Tailwind CSS and Svelte and Font Awesome, and Mike might say, I don't do any of that. I use Tailwind CSS, I use React, and then I use just custom SVG icons because I prefer that.
React,
so each developer,
how dare you?
It's your favorite framework, man, or library, or whatever people yell at me for, whatever it is.
I'm offended.
That was my intention. It wasn't, but I'll take it. I'll take the offense. Or I guess you're taking the offense. Man, can you tell that we've been fried today? Like we're just like, I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Custom code. So when is custom code the fastest? Let's answer that question again. So when you are a seasoned coder and you are backed with relevant tools that you are familiar with, including things like snippets and those type of things, this sort of backing, will make sections of a site a breeze to ship. And so, boom, there you go. Like, let's take a scenario real quick. If you want to custom code a website, let's say you like spend all this time and you learn how to code from zero and blah, 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 and you put it all together. Great, it's running on your computer. How do you get it to be live? What hosting platform do you use? What are the limitations of the different platforms? What is the pricing? Like, there are so many questions that are answered by just using a no-code platform. Usually they'll host it for you. They'll do all this stuff for you. The only thing that some of them will have you do is like connect your domain. They'll deal with any server problems. They'll deal with errors. The list just goes on and on and on forever.
With custom code, so this is ironically, I agree with that no code is the thing that most people should reach for when they need something quickly, especially, again, no code with templates. But for me personally, at this point, I have, like Matt said, a very good set of tools and snippets and UI libraries and design systems that I use on a consistent basis, that if it's a small enough project or website, I think instead of learning a tool, like a separate tool like Webflow or whatever, I'd probably still do it in custom code. Because for me, like the deployment stuff, all that is very quick, very easy, again, because I've done it a million times. And just maintaining a site like that for me is easier than it is to maintain with a custom code, a no code solution. But this is a very preferential thing and something that comes with experience. And sometimes I acknowledge sometimes that it would be the wrong decision, because in some cases going down that rabbit hole, it'll probably lead me to spending time on things that I shouldn't be spending time on, depending on the project that I need to get done, right? Like if it's a landing page that needs to get out next week or the day after or something like that, and it doesn't matter what it looks like, you just need information on a page, on a website, and I go the custom code route, I'm probably going to do it slower than just choosing a template and filling in some information. Just flat out, obviously. I'd still probably do it because I'm stubborn in that sense. But a lot of other times when you do need a little bit of flexibility, when I do want to just be in my comfort zone, again, it all comes back to what you're more comfortable with. That's why I would go the custom code route.
And that does make total sense. I mean, when we were doing a lot of Couch CMS websites for people way back in the day, Couch CMS became like the simplest tool for us to use. I think, Mike, we even had a temporary, I forget what it was for, but it was some sort of landing page that we used. And it was just a simple single thing. I think it was for an event actually that a client was running. And we ended up just spinning it up and using Couch CMS to fill in the different fields in the different areas. And, arguably at the end of the day, it's more work, but for us, it was just super fast because we were already working in it on 2 or 3 projects at the time, that we basically just took one of those smaller projects and completely gutted it, if you will, and then just used a blank page with Couch CMS and just went to town, and then went into Couch CMS, set it all up and said, oh, here you go. There's also a CMS if you need to change stuff, and, let the client change their dates and times and whatever for their little event page that was only needed to be available for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And that's an exact example of how custom code's faster. Like, sure, I could have went to, I don't think Webflow existed at the time, but I could have went to Wix or Squarespace, but then it's like, oh, now I got to learn how to use this stuff. And I'm just skipping the learning curve. I can just get going right now, as of today, which is a huge thing in speed, right? You want to build a website quickly, getting started, as soon as possible is a big part of that equation. Now, hiring a developer is another one. And this is obviously, how do you make a website quickly? Hire someone else to do it, right? That's not necessarily the case. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff in this section. Many entrepreneurs, if you're like, okay, I'm working on this, I need a website right now for something. I need it quick, but I do not have time to do it. Fair enough, right? There's a reason why Mike and I run a web development agency. There's a reason why I help random people with their websites and stuff like that. There's a reason why these agencies exist. So if you have the means, but you do not have the time, then you can, of course, look at hiring a developer to get the website done quicker than you would be able to. The problem here is that web development agencies commonly, and this is not all web development agencies at all, but commonly, especially these days, they are looking for large-scale projects. They lean more toward that. Now, again, there's still thousands that will work on small projects, but many of the ones that we've talked to, especially as web development agencies sort of mature, they will start leaning on, hey, I don't want to do small single-page websites, 2-page websites. I want to have, a big impact and do large-scale projects. That's kind of our bread and butter. Now, with this sort of large scale, kind of comes with a long procedure. So let's say, for example, you do find a web development agency and they're willing to do a website for you at the scale in which your website is prospectively going to be at. Some of these web development agencies are tooled for large scale projects, meaning they will have this massively long and egregious procedure. They'll make you attend a few meetings. They'll do some wireframes. They'll do some prototypes. They'll do the development. Then there's some revisions. Then there's approvals. And then there's deployment. Now, this is a very standard way to make a website. Meetings, wireframes, prototypes, developments, revisions, approvals, and deployment, right? It's not that crazy. However, you're trying to do something quickly. You might not need 3 meetings in the beginning. You may only want 1. You may not care about the wireframes. You just want the prototypes. Maybe you don't want the prototypes of the wireframes. You want them to skip that and go right into development. And some of these larger web development agencies, or at least the ones that are used to working on large scale projects, are just not tooled to do this. They're not trained to do it. They have large teams, and each of these steps is, a part of one team and this and that. There's a whole procedure that they have to guarantee or close to guarantee their customer success, and they will not stray from it. So if your project is large scale, then making it quickly just may not be possible. You may get stuck with one of these web development agencies that's just like, oh my God, I have to do this, 8, 10, 12, because they're all unique. All these procedures are unique. This 12-step procedure, what do I do? And it will largely depend on your definition of quick/fast. So this is the first time in this episode that we've really talked about the scale of your project, because it is something you really do need to think about. sort of a standard 5-page business website, small business website, is a standard thing in the industry, right? I even said it in the name. It's a standard type of website. So getting it done pretty quickly using tools or hiring a developer, it can get done pretty quick. But if your website is, 15,000 articles and, God knows whatever else, then your definition of quick and fast may need to slow down. Maybe it's not 2 weeks, it's 2 months. Maybe it's not 2 months, it's 1 year, etc. So you do need to take a look at your scale. And this is extremely important. The reason why I mentioned scale now in this section is because you are taking your idea and you're moving it to another person. If you think of it that way. If your idea is just a quick 5-page website, you can name all 5 pages, tell them what you need on all 5 pages, give it to them. 1 hour later, after the meeting's done, they know generally what you want, maybe some semantics to deal with down the road, and that's it. But if you have a multi-thousand page website or a very complex web app, you need to move, again, this idea or teach this other person, this is what I want, this is how I want it, this is why I want it this way, this is my country, so this is the limitations and what types of e-commerce systems I need to use. These are my taxes that I need to file. Oh, I can't work with American institutions. Oh, I can. Or if I do, I incur a lot of cost for some sort of legal reason. So maybe, we need to look at local solutions. Like it's a big undertaking to take your idea, if it's complex, and sort of ship that onto someone else who's then going to create it for you. And so you need to take a look at your definition of quick/fast and take a look at the complexity and the size of your website and say, okay, what is realistic here? And talking to a developer, talking to a web dev agency is a way to sort of get checked in that area. Talk to a couple of them and you kind of get a thing where one guy says, he can do it in 6 weeks. The other guy says 5 weeks. The other guy says 8 weeks. It's like, okay, there's our range. It's not 2 days. It's several weeks is our range. So the verdict here is that you need to find the developer that's right for you, right? You need second opinions, third opinions. You should be shopping around. This sounds counterintuitive to moving fast. But if you want to hire a developer, you do need to find that right one. Now, one way you can do it is you can seek out a freelancer. You can go on a freelance board. You can type in what you need. This is my timeline. This is what I need. These are my images. I need someone to take pictures. Whatever it is you need. You can put it out there and people will apply to you. You go through the applications and you accept a person. Now, that's one way to sort of, instead of you constantly approaching different companies, you basically open the door and say, I want people that want to do this job to apply to me. And then you can go through it. It can be time consuming. However, hopefully all the applicants or most of the applicants will be able to do exactly your project, which is why this is so attractive to some people. Another way to do it, if you want to avoid any potentially bureaucratic procedures, like we must have 3 meetings and things like that, if you want to avoid those things, you can reach out to your connections. So hopefully you have some connections. This obviously hinges on that. But if you have some connections, you can reach out and say, hey, man, I have this, enter website project name here. I would like this done. Can Mike do it for me? Like, is Mike available to do this? Is he around? Can Digital Dynasty do it for me? Whatever, like, can Digital Dynasty Design get this done? Whatever, yada, yada. And then now there's sort of like that reference, right? Like you're skipping some of the bureaucratic procedures. You're using your connections. Your foot is in the door is what it's commonly called. Now, another one here, and this is controversial among the community, but your results may vary. You can hire off of a job board like Fiverr. If you find a Fiverr developer that has a set of parameters where they're willing to do, I'm going to make a website in 5 days and I'm able to implement these 5 features, you look at their prior work and you like it and you're like, great, they have a lot of great reviews, fantastic. Go in there, get it done, boom, 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 it's over, right? So it's almost like a reverse you posting on a freelance board. They've just posted, hey, I'm able to do this. You say, yep, that matches my criteria, and there you go. Some people say, a Fiverr developer isn't the greatest and you shouldn't do it, whatever. Because it is relatively cheap, right? And it's hard for people to pump things out reliably within 2, 3, 4, 5 days, of course. However, again, I'm not saying all Fiverr developers are bad. Absolutely. Go and check their record, their reviews, see what they've done. If you're happy with it, people seem to like it and it's working, great. And there you go. You're good to go. And I've already mentioned this, but I do want to solidify it here. And that is that this is the kind of the last but most time consuming method. So it kind of goes against the mantra of this episode, which is you can shop around and get several different quotes. look around at who makes what and check their projects, and literally just Google, I need a website made, or like web development agency, things like that, marketing agency. Look at local results, look at international results, whatever suits your needs. The problem with this one is it's time consuming. It absolutely works, and if you're a quick Googler, you can get it done pretty quick, but it is time consuming, and so it kind of goes against the whole let's build quickly. So let's answer the question here for this section like we have for the other ones. When is hiring a developer the fastest? It's the fastest when you have the means, meaning the money, but you don't have the time. And if you have a massive project, you're not in a massive rush for it. And again, rush/quick, like how quick you think things should be done is obviously relative. Some people think several weeks is quick. Some people think an hour is too long. So you do have to kind of adjust your idea. And something else I want to note here is that when you're hiring a developer, you are moving that idea to the other person. I mentioned this before, so I'm just going to touch on it. You're moving that idea to them. You're teaching them what you want, and then they are actually implementing it. So it's absolutely crucial that you really have a solidified idea if you want this to be quick. You have a solidified idea, you know exactly what you want. You maybe have some questions, which is totally fine, but you write those down. And if you want to move this process along, try to think of it as like, okay, I need to have this other person. It's almost like the telephone game, right? I need to pass this to this other person. This person needs to implement what I said, create a website, and it needs to be right the first time, or as right as possible the first time, because I'm trying to move quick here. So just make sure that you have a clearly defined example of this.
This one is the hardest one. And the most practical one for most people, unfortunately.
Yes.
I really feel like most people will want to hire a developer, especially if they have the means, or they think they have the means, because it's a huge time saver and they'll do it right. But the reality is that it could cost a lot of money. It could take a lot of time, and most of the time it'll take at least double what you think it'll take, and sometimes even more. And you could choose the wrong developer, and there's not much you can do about solving that. Now, yes, there's sites like Freelancer and all those other sites, Upwork, that have a good rating system, right? Like they do have a rating system, but those rating systems can be played a little bit, and you still have to be careful. And you really, in those sites, you really do want to go for kind of, if you're looking to get something done quickly, find someone that can do something quickly and pay them the money to do it. Don't try to cheap out. Don't try to find the best deal on any of those websites. If your goal is to get it done quickly, you need to find the best person for the job and pay them their rate and get it done quickly for the ones that are fully reviewed. Okay, Fiverr is similar, but Fiverr, again, it is a big question mark. It is one of those things you have to kind of try, and you might have to try a few people. So it might not be the route to go for something, again, to be done quickly. Because it has gone down in quality recently due to the fact that just a lot of the development time takes a lot of time and a lot of money. So it's important to understand that just because you've chosen the path of hiring a developer and you even have the means to pay them, that you will all of a sudden are guaranteed to have a quick result. Because if you choose the wrong person, and that's easily done, believe me, Matt and I have brought into projects that have chosen the wrong person many times. It becomes a disaster, and you're going back and forth for months to get a simple web page done. And that could be time costly, money costly, everything. Maybe we need to do a whole episode and do some research on finding the right developer to work with. Honestly, that it's something that people, I think, struggle with right now.
I think it's a good idea, Mike, because one thing I was thinking of, and I'm not going to mention the project name, but I definitely have had one project in particular and a couple like this where someone has come to me and said, well, the web developer didn't do this. And I'll think to myself, well, did you pay them for that? Were they contracted to do that? And they say, well, no, just the site needs it. Sometimes it's something like emergency care, maintenance. Sometimes it's something like they just think that the person's going to look after the site forever. We had one instance in which somebody had left the company, and it was assumed that the person that made the site within the company was just going to keep looking after it. For what purpose? And no pay? I'm not really sure. When it comes to tech, people just don't, like, they just seem to sort of lose the plot sometimes. And so I think that's a good idea, Mike, is like we can kind of maybe even break that down. This is just me brainstorming. But we can even break down your idea and say, you know, from the consumer perspective, this is the mentality you should go in. From the professional perspective, because we've been there, this is how, you know, we go in. and you kind of have that back and forth. And then I'm sure other businesses do things differently. So maybe they will, gather some comments and feedback in that regard as well. So that's a cool idea. I like that idea for a future episode. I do actually want to mention one other thing that I just thought off of the top of my head as well is when it comes to the speed of hiring a web developer, one thing you can think of, especially entrepreneurs will think of stuff like this, is that you're continuing to work. So you yourself are like, I need a website, I'm going to hire someone else. But you're not just like suddenly shut down. You can continue to work while the other person is developing the site. So you can write the blog post, you can go work on something completely different that's other than the website if you want. But you're saving time by burning the candle at both ends. They're working on something, you're working on something. It's not taking time out of your day to go work on the site. It just makes sense. Kind of multitasking, if you will. So that kind of concludes those 3 sections that I had on like how do you develop a site and like which ones are fast and how are they fast and why are they fast and whatever. But there's 2 sections here I want to talk about, and it's 2 questions really. And they are, when should you build a site quickly and when should you not build a site quickly? Now, I know that time is money and everyone should work fast and whatever. We're going to get into that in a second. So the first one I'm going to tackle here is, when should you build a site quickly? The big one here is when the site is temporary. It's honestly the only one I could really think of off the top of my head. But when the site is temporary, you literally should build it quickly. You should not be pouring your soul into it and all this stuff, unless for some reason there's some sort of extenuating, artistic reason for you to do it like this. Having a basic website that's up temporarily makes a lot of sense. Some sites that are for particular events make sense to just do it quickly. Maybe you need to sell tickets for 2 weeks. Okay, great. A little bit of a Shopify store or find another e-commerce partner that'll help you out. Fantastic. Things like that. Things that are on a temporary basis. Think about something like you're going to the local fair and you have a booth there and you want to add a small section to your site. Are you really going to hire a developer, get all this stuff because you're going to the local fair and then that page is going to come down after a week? No. You're going to go quickly. You're going to spin up a landing page. You're going to put that out and that's going to be the end of it. Also, a temporary basis. So not just event-based, but temporary basis. Common example would be if, we'll throw up this no-code landing page while the developers go and create the full marketing website over the coming months. And then we'll maybe slowly update the no-code page with the new things or little screenshots of the site that's coming or something like that, right? You have the tools at your disposal to quickly update things, but you don't want to spend a lot of time. Usually that no-code landing page is going to be mostly based on a template or a quick design of some sort because you want to focus on making the actual site the full custom experience because it needs the time. So this leads us to the next part, which is, when should you not build a site quickly? As a blanket term, when the site is expected to have longevity. Now, this is the absolute hardest thing that Mike and I struggle with clients. Clients in general want everything fast, cheap, and perfect. And I've already mentioned this, but this is a lethal combination when it comes to a project, especially when the project demands as close to as perfect as possible of a result. So for example, you do not want to rush a website that will serve as the foundation for your entire company moving forward. Now, this does not mean that you should not move quickly, but what comes to mind when I say this is the quote from wherever it is, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Do it, do the job. Don't just keep sitting on it. Do the job, but don't go in rushing, because websites, and especially web apps, sometimes serve as the actual backbone for a company. Sometimes an e-commerce platform also does part of your taxes. And so this is a crucial thing. You want to rush in there thinking, oh, this no-code platform does all my taxes. Fantastic. You rip through the year, you have tons of sales, you do all this marketing, and then you realize, oh my God, it only does American taxes. Now what do? Can we export these things? No, we cannot. Okay, I guess we're writing it all down manually and, mess. Total mess. Don't rush into it, because not rushing into it will usually catch problems like this. Also, you do not want to find yourself building for months on Wix or Squarespace or Webflow or wherever, only to find that the platform is limited in some way that is crucial to your business. And then you're going to have to rebuild it. Because problems like this can happen, even if you do a lot of research. But a lot of the problems, usually ones that are crucial, are caught in the initial research. They're caught in the initial development. And the kind of going through things methodically and slowly, and doing it right, if you will, catches a lot of these problems. And there's going to be problems with every project, there's no doubt. But usually if you do it sort of thoroughly and nicely and properly. Generally, if there is something that the no-code platform does not have, or this coding language for whatever reason doesn't have somehow, it's not a big thing. It's like, oh, well, we'll just have a different URL structure or something, right? Like, it's not a huge, like, oh my God, we all we do is sell plates, and this thing specifically can't sell plates. We've built everything around this, and we got to the e-commerce part, and now we can't sell plates. It's like, well, that's not good. So that's something that should be caught early, or as early as possible. And another thing that people do not believe when I tell them this, but I do tell some clients this. Ask yourself, is this website an investment? Sometimes it's straight up a monetary investment. Are you making a blog that you intend to make a great amount of revenue off of? Yes? Then why rush it? Don't rush it. You can do it quickly by using templates and those type of things, but don't rush it. Don't be like, oh my God, we need this tomorrow. And then like people are freaking out, running around and no one's answering the phone and you're trying to get something done. And now this person's blocked for a day and that's unacceptable. So you're running around like chaos. Mike and I have been part of these projects before. Well, I'm sure we'll be part of them again. And it's just total chaos. So that's why you should not build a site quickly. Now, one other thing I do want to add, I just thought of off the top of my head, is your set of requirements rigid? We have this conversation with clients all the time. They'll come to us with a set of requirements. Let's say it's 15 requirements. Okay. So we tell them, all right, this is what we think for a no code. This is what we think for a coding site, whatever, and a custom coded site. And all they see is the price. We write up a quote, 2 quotes. Here's what we can do for no code. It's $1,000, let's just say, and it's $2,000 for a custom coded site. They go, oh, let's go no code for sure. $1,000. Woo-wee. Let's do that. That sounds good. Yeah. All is well that ends well, but this is not going to end well if you're rigid as hell. So you go, okay, I'll build it in no code. Then they look at it and they go, hey, I actually don't want my titles to be like that. And you go, hey, sorry, I'm using this, this editor that doesn't allow me to change that. And they go like, well, that's absolutely unacceptable. They're rigid in what they want. Well, then again, this is one of these things where they want it cheap, fast, and perfect. It's a lethal combination. It's just not going to work. And we have commonly had this problem with people where I'll explain to them even. I'll go, we're going to use WordPress. You want this done fast and cheap. So we're just going to use a template. Now here's the thing. We're going to go in there. We're going to put the template together. We're going to change all the colors, the logos, the images, the whatever. That's what we're going to do. But what you see is what you get. I'm not going to, for this price and for this timeline, I'm not going to add anything of a custom code. I'm not going to configure massive plugins. I'm not going to do all this mess. Period. I'm not going to do it. I want you to just do this. I want you to I lost my train of thought, Mike. The hell was I talking about?
No, yeah, you're on the right track. You want them to understand that this is what the template does, and there's nothing you can do outside of it.
Right. That's my train of thought. Jesus, we're losing it today. But no, yeah, right. And then they'll go to you, and Mike, you and I've seen this several times. Be like, well, where's the e-commerce part? What e-commerce part? At what point did you mention e-commerce to me? Let alone when I showed it to you, you didn't ask. You didn't look for it. Did you even look? What the hell's going on here? And so that is when, if you're rigid in your thing, if you're a picky person, you're a picky person. Sorry, you got to say this. If you're picky, you got to pay. You got to pay. You're probably going to need custom, or you're going to have to let up on the pickiness a little bit, or you're going to have to find the perfect no-code tool for you. Period. There's nothing else to be said about it. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. The fast, cheap, and perfect demand is an absolutely lethal combination in almost every single type of project. And it's probably why most projects fail. Because there's a very high, I forget exactly where we got this number, but it's from some study, I'm sure, or something, where it's 90 some odd % of projects fail or something like that. Even if it was 50%, that's a hell of a lot of projects that fail. And I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of that, a percentage of that percentage, a large percentage of it, is because people wanted things fast, cheap, and perfect. And then they got mad at the web developer or whomever they were working with, the contractor, if it was a physical project like a building, and they go, yeah, that's it, you're fired, get out of here. And then it's like, but I still want it fast, cheap, and it's ridiculous. You can't, I understand you're hiring somebody, but at the same time, it's still got to work within the constraints of physics. We can't be summon a black hole tomorrow. I'm paying you to do it. Oh, all right, let me just do something that's never been done before real quick.
I think it's kind of funny to land on the conclusion for a website titled "How to Build a Website Quickly" of don't. and I think that's where my conclusion would be for like almost everyone. Just don't plan for a fast and quick website, because most likely if you need a website fast and quickly, it's probably not a critical piece of your business.
Right.
Like if that's the case, then you're just looking for a business card website. And in that case, like whatever, okay, just put something up there. But is it going to drive business to you if you do it that way? No. Are people going to be able to find you easier? Sure. Cool. All right. If that's your goal, then okay. Do you want, like, should you reevaluate your goals a little bit? I think so. I think there's a lot more you could do with an online presence that's a little bit more interactive, that's a little bit more thought out, and that's built a little bit better. 100%. But the reality is a lot of people don't think that way. So hopefully this helps you, the person out there that's looking for clients, frame your quotes in a way that makes it easier to sell a longer run, if that makes sense. You want to be able to have all the information that we've given you here to be able to almost convince your customer not to build a site quickly. I think that's kind of how it's structured. And realistically, like Matt said, that triangle, that like fast, cheap, and good triangle, right? You can only pick two, right? You can't pick 3. And I would argue really it's hard to do even sometimes too, because cheap and good means it's slow, could also backfire, but it's possible. It is a possibility. Like you could find a contractor that just doesn't have a lot of time, that can work slowly, but they can get something done really well in a reasonable price, right? So sure, okay, fair enough. You can't find something that has all 3. Cheap, fast, and good doesn't exist. That's why the triangle exists. That's why you have to choose one. And realistically, you should always be aiming to choose fast and good, right? Like that should be your goal, I guess. Which means it's probably not going to be very cheap, right? So whether you choose fast and good or something in between, maybe like a slow build out, a phased build out. I always recommend phases of like, hey, let's build a good base. It's going to take us a little bit of time extra. So something between fast and slow, but we're going to have something that if the phase 1 succeeds, phase 2 will be easier to maintain and build out. And phase 3 will be easier. And phase 4, like building that design system, building a better ecosystem for your product, making sure that everything is deployed correctly. Like there's so many different reasons to always go with a good approach that it just like, don't cheap out on this. I'm speaking to the people out there that are the decision makers that have the deep pockets to do this. If you don't have deep pockets, and I hesitate to say this, if you have an idea that you just want to test out or something like that, and you don't have deep pockets, just put something out there on a no-code platform and get something going. Or if you're a developer, just create it yourself. Don't invest in it until you know the idea succeeds, because like Matt said, 90-something% of projects fail. And sometimes that is because they cheap out. Sometimes it is because there's just no market fit. Sometimes it's because you just executed incorrectly, whatever. But until you just make one step in that direction and invest your time and effort and your energy into that step and figure out if that step is worthwhile taking, it's not worth it to put in a bunch of money. It just isn't. It's such a crowded space right now. Apps especially, or websites especially, it's super crowded. It's not easy to get into. Like if you have this amazing idea for a social media, nope, stop it. You don't. Like I'm being a realist right now, but most of the time, the projects that we work on are for smaller niche audiences. There's monetization in there. There's built-in time for ramping up those audiences. There's deep pockets sometimes and stuff like that. There's VC funding. There's dashboards you have to create. Like those are the projects that I'm working on right now that make sense for web developers to work on. I'm not working on a social media site. I'm not working on a random app like a food blog or something like that. Like I'm just not working on those things because there's no money in them. Like there's just no money in them. Look how hard it is or was to get freaking X or Twitter monetized. It's a massive website with millions and millions of people using it every freaking day. Not monetizable.
It's like a cultural norm, and it was hard to monetize.
Hard to monetize. It almost impossible. Like they cannot get money flowing into that so that people can actually get like, for an actual positive green check, like whatever. I can't think right now. You know what I'm talking about. Twitter is losing money, period. And those are the kinds of ideas you have to get away from. You have to find your niche. You have to find something that you can do online, that you can process some paperwork, help a lawyer, help a law firm do one thing slightly faster. Those are the kinds of ideas you need to figure out. Those things can work because, again, you're targeting a much smaller audience. If you help them do something slightly faster, then that's saving them time. They're willing to invest in saving time. Companies across the globe are willing to invest in time savings, right? Or security or just ease of use, whatever. Processes, simplification. There's so many different industries you can go into that have those kinds of things. But in none of those cases should you ever build quickly. Like, you shouldn't go to a law firm and be like, look what I just put together with my Fiverr developer or my Wix for you to upload your secure documentation into and get it processed quickly. No, you should have a understanding of their needs, create a design doc, create a requirements doc, get your developers on board, build it properly, get your, prototype one out quickly, sure. But make sure it's designed and everything up to that point is proper, right? Like, it's just, it's one of those things where I'm against the build quick mentality of like, let's get something out there on the next day. But there are certain areas in your processes that you have to do quickly to succeed as well.
It's definitely a hard fought battle, but I agree with you. It's a hard fought battle just because time is money. People who aren't technical are going to go, let's just do that quick. And they're going to be the same way if they don't understand contracting and how to build a building. I mean, I'm sure that if I went to a contractor like, few weeks, they'd be like, how are you talking about? I have no idea, right? So it's up to the web developer to sort of, set that straight realistically, right? And be realistic. But I know that some entrepreneurs are aware of the time they've had, sites and apps built, and they just don't care. They just want it to go quicker and quicker. But these are often the same people that will then complain like, oh my God, it like crashed once. It's like, well, yeah, I'd imagine so. If it's all taped together and stuck together with bubble gum, I'd have friggin' imagined it was going to crash a few times. It was cracking. It was cracked since the beginning. It was like, of course, something's got to give. Something's got to give. But that's it. I think that concludes this episode, unless you have anything else to add, Mike.
Nope, that's it for me.
All right. Well, remember that we are on Patreon if you want to support episodes like this. That's patreon.com/HTML, all the things. And many thanks to our $3 tier patrons. Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Fire Ant Season via fireantseason.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, and Joshua via silvio.us. We'd also like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on HTMLallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. And remember that Scrimba affiliate link that I mentioned before in the show description, as well as the show notes on HTMLallthethings.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things Podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.